Today, we will discuss the markers that can help you easily determine which woman is inherently corrupt and unreliable. You see them around you every day. Some have been unlucky enough to marry such women, and to be frank, their relationships ended tragically. Let's start with the simplest markers. The most important and interesting markers will be in the middle and towards the end of the video. Let's begin by understanding what defines a person's personality. Naturally, it's a collection of deviations that are dynamic. A significant part of our deviations is shaped by our life experiences. The greater the experience in a particular matter, the more likely it is to become part of one's personality. To simplify, for example, someone who has smoked for years and then quit is never truly free from tobacco addiction. A person addicted to computer games who claims to have gone too far and takes a 2-week break is not free from the addiction to games. If a woman regularly goes to nightclubs and bars, it indicates her deviations. In a relationship with such a woman, on the scales, on one side will be you, and on the other, her so-called minor deviations. If at the initial stage of the relationship you outweigh because you are something new in her life, over time you will no longer be new, and accordingly, the guarantees decrease. At the beginning of a relationship, everything may seem perfect from the outside. Suppose you have sparked interest in a woman accustomed to hanging out in bars. You might ask her if she plans to continue partying and drinking alcohol in the future. She confidently responds that she certainly does not intend to, or she might say she'll never go alone. We'll go together and have fun, my dear. However, even for someone with little relationship experience, it's clear that such agreements are futile. The idea of drinking together and going to nightclubs together, and if we like someone else, we must not hide it and should inform each other immediately, is clearly understood even by my dog to be empty words influenced by emotions. When that fiery passion you feel at the time begins to fade, those agreements evaporate as if they never existed. Some might simplistically say that in true love, that fiery passion never disappears. I would tell you that the foundation of true love cannot be fiery passion, which is inevitably temporary and will certainly extinguish. The same mechanism applies to a woman inclined towards infidelity. If a woman has tendencies that increase the likelihood of infidelity, it is permanent. The risk of waking up one day with horns on your head exists just as much in the first month of your relationship as it does after 17 years of marriage. A simple example. A woman whose life motto is, "We only live once," and if returning home at 3 in the morning in a drunken state is her way of enjoying life, then she has already overcome those barriers in her mind. In that case, a man's infidelity might be just another interesting quest for her, because remaining faithful is a self-restriction that lies between her conscience and desires. She is already accustomed to overcoming moral barriers when she was partying in nightclubs. Consequently, if she were to get involved with someone like Jamal, she would easily find a justification for herself. We, as humans, easily agree with ourselves when it comes to our weaknesses. Naturally, if you ask a woman any type of question about infidelity when you first meet her, she will tell you that infidelity is disgusting and unacceptable. If I love someone, then it's true love, and it's forever. Others cheat because they cannot experience true love, but I can, so infidelity is out of the question. This is roughly the kind of synthesis a woman makes at that time. Let me put it this way. If you haven't turned off the video by now, it means you are genuinely interested in this topic. Therefore, this isn't the kind of video you shouldn't listen to until the end. Even if you listen to it all the way through, you shouldn't draw abstract conclusions. That's why I advise you to listen very carefully and at least twice from start to finish. Now grab a pen and paper and note down the markers I will discuss shortly. Just trust me on this. If you carefully understand and internalize all of this, one day it will save your life. Generally, both men and women cheat, but a woman's infidelity is fatal for a relationship. In most cases, the result doesn't happen immediately. There is almost no story where a woman deeply regrets her act of infidelity, falls at the man's feet, and asks for forgiveness. Why? Because for a woman, straying means she no longer sees her man as the only one. A woman's infidelity is always the result of feelings. Therefore, the new partner can be considered a new lover. Consequently, a woman's infidelity is accompanied by the desire to transition into a new relationship. Even if she doesn't go with the first Jamal, she will go with the second Jamal, who will inevitably appear. It's just a matter of time. Or she might even create a love triangle. A woman who cannot be faithful to one man can never be truly loyal to anyone because the man is not the issue here. I have analyzed hundreds of relationship stories where a woman fell out of love, cheated within the relationship, left or went to someone else, and so on. Therefore, I can confidently list the typical markers of a woman's unfaithful psyche. Even if you discover just one of these, you can confidently question a woman's integrity. Let's start with the simplest and most banal, her appearance. If she wears short skirts, shorts, deep-cut necklines, or uses any other visual methods to provoke the men around her, that's already a bad sign. If you think she doesn't realize this or doesn't feel what she's doing, you're very mistaken. She understands everything very well. She actually wants to be devoured with eyes. Of course, she will justify herself to you and to herself by saying she's just doing it for herself. But I have a specific question for you. Why do you need to believe such an obvious lie? A woman with her provocative behavior subconsciously, and in some cases consciously, signals to other men her readiness to get acquainted with them. Simultaneously, she enters into competition with other women. A woman who is pathologically fond of short skirts does this regardless of whether she has a man by her side or not. Because the hormonal dose she receives from other men's attention is more important to her than the stability of a relationship with one specific man. Naturally, the desire to taste such a woman peaks in the minds of most men, and they start deceiving themselves. They try to change a problematic woman so that she is no longer problematic. Listen to me, my friend. If you think you're such a great guy that you'll conquer such a woman, make her fall in love with you, be exclusive to her, and she'll suddenly change just like that. I want to tell you that you're very mistaken. You're putting yourself in a very foolish position. As soon as you reveal any weakness at the very first instance, from that moment, the countdown timer for the destruction of your relationship starts. The same applies to provocative photos uploaded on social networks that entice you towards something. Remember this simple rule. A woman who demonstrates her appearance lives to elevate her sense of self-importance. For her, her beauty and the demand from men will always be the most important thing. She will never give this up for any relationship. Never. And the key word here is never. Consequently, in the long term, she is doomed to unhappiness. And the man who will be with her is doubly doomed to unhappiness. The greater the woman's self-perception, the more easily she can overcome moral barriers. And just as easily, she can justify herself and blame you. And when a woman's cheating psyche is already activated, two things remain: a candidate and comfortable conditions. The next marker is when a woman started having relationships at an early age. This means that she never had internal boundaries from the beginning, especially if she managed to be with several men. Even more so if she established sexual contact from an early age. In this case, you should forget about boundaries altogether. So if she had one boyfriend, then another in 2 or 3 months, then a third, sometimes they left her and she suffered, and sometimes she left because she got bored. From this, we conclude that for her, a relationship with a man is simply entertainment. If a woman has ever had a relationship with an unclear and uncertain goal, it means things are already bad. A woman suitable for a family takes relationships with a man seriously. She doesn't consider any man just for fun, especially not temporarily. For the same reason, she maintains distance with all other men, regardless of whether they are friends, neighbors, or colleagues. She doesn't hand out advances or collect admirers. If at the beginning of a relationship she receives flowers from some no-name or is messaging male friends, or worse, hanging out with them, then your situation is bad. Soon, your relationship will turn into a soap opera. The next point is a woman who loves extreme experiences. This is a woman who cannot live without emotional drives, and it doesn't matter what the source of those drives is. It could be a sport that involves extreme activities, fast driving in a car or on a motorcycle, or even constantly traveling to explore cities and countries. For a woman of this type, a relationship is another extreme drive, where there will always be ups and downs. Sometimes you'll rise, sometimes you'll fall extremely, and she can't stay in one place. Cheating and conflicts are naturally sources of drives for her. The point is that because of her desire for drives, she is ready to risk even her life. The next is a woman who drinks regularly, for example, every Friday or every weekend. Bars, clubs, and generally such women themselves don't know what they want from life. That's exactly why they spend all their free time on entertainment. They fill their inner emptiness with dreams and fantasies. They perceive their life as a movie script, and they are the heroes of that movie. Generally, when you realize during communication with a woman that she hasn't defined a specific life orientation, it's better to end that communication right there, because when a woman hasn't defined a specific route for herself, she will be swayed wherever the wind blows. This means that absolutely anything can be expected from her. The first stage of a relationship with her, where there is relative calmness and a sense of stability, should not mislead you, because it is temporary. After a certain period, 1 or 2 years, her inclinations will take over. Naturally, you should not consider a woman who has been someone's lover. Generally, a woman's inner inclination to be someone's lover doesn't appear out of thin air. It has its cause and effect explanation. She absorbs emotions from that scenario in large doses, like a vampire with blood. She likes a scenario from which she will receive dramas and sufferings. Consequently, during a relationship with you, there is a high chance she will cheat to receive dramas and sufferings. There are situations where a woman was deceived by a man who didn't tell her he was married. Here, it is important what the woman does after she learns the truth. A normal woman would immediately and permanently end and sever all contact with him. In any other scenario, I think it's clear what conclusions we should draw. Next point. If a woman behaves provocatively, using foul language and acting rudely towards anyone, it means she loves being the center of attention, but she does it through toxic methods. Contact with such a woman is like a fight without rules. She will use absolutely any method to gain a favorable position for herself. In a relationship, this manifests as endless conflicts and naturally risks the relationship to the end. And given that such women consider everyone bad except themselves, one day she will paint you as the worst person and take revenge through Jamal. Such women love to criticize and curse their exes at the beginning of a relationship, and you will not be an exception. You already have the status of a candidate for that list of exes. Consequently, she will tell her next guest what a bastard you were. Another open marker is blatant lying. If she ever looked you in the eyes and tried to deceive you, or even preferred silence over telling the truth, you must understand that this is neither an accident nor stupidity. Especially in such matters, there are no trivialities. It is part of her life, and she will always act this way. There is a phrase in the Bible, "He who is unfaithful in little is unfaithful in much." In other words, any liar tries to justify their actions to the end. Consequently, even if you catch such a woman in infidelity, she will invent a story where she is not guilty of anything. The next thing to pay attention to is the woman's friends and their conversation topics. If her friends are provocative women and their meetings revolve around gossiping and judging others, as well as nightclubs, bars, partying, traveling, and generally having a good time, you should simply turn around and leave without looking back, at full speed. Nothing good awaits you with that woman. Such a representative of the female gender likely possesses all the defects I have listed so far and will list shortly, all at once. The next point is bodily modesty, or rather the lack of reflexive modesty when she is naked. This is a very important nuance to consider. Even small children from a certain age reflexively cover themselves out of modesty, and this happens even without anyone teaching them to do so. As they approach 5 or 6 years old, they start trying to cover their nudity. Therefore, if after your first intimacy the woman is not ashamed of her nudity and does not try to cover it, it's better to think about it. How many times has she been in a similar situation with a new man that her reflexive sense of modesty is already worn out? And those men who have a lot of experience with women will confirm this. Women who cover themselves after the first intimate encounter are much more normal. Conversely, women who walk around the house in their birthday suit after the first intimate encounter are experienced in everything. If you don't know this, then you don't know how experienced they are. If you meet such a woman, there's no need to argue with her or accuse her of anything. It's better to engage your childlike curiosity and observe. If you approach it correctly, you can learn a lot from such a woman. You should observe and analyze her reasoning and draw the right conclusions that will be useful in the future. A wise man, through experience with such a woman, will better understand the difference and value of a useful woman. Seeking an enemy in a woman and fighting with her somewhat highlights your own foolishness. The main idea of this video is that, in the long-term perspective, the likelihood of a woman's infidelity in a family relationship does not depend solely on you. You might be wealthy, attractive, athletic, and even possess the most effective behavior model. But one day, all of that might mean nothing to a woman if her moral compass is already skewed, And if it is skewed, you must remember that it will inevitably happen sooner or later. But this should not scare you. It should motivate you to thoroughly analyze your chosen partner. Accordingly, you should approach the process of selecting your life companion with responsibility. The thoughts and behaviors of a woman suitable for a family should translate into a respectful attitude towards the male figure. In essence, she should strive for peace and balance. If that woman constantly stresses you, takes away your peace and comfort, and throws you off balance, just stop and think. Why do you need such a woman? Now that you've listened to this video and agree with me, it's simple and clear. But in real life, when a man meets such a fiery girl, he behaves radically differently. Especially when that effective woman also shows initiative for closeness. You desire her greatly, and at that time, your brain searches for arguments to deceive you, to create fantasies, and convince you that she is much better than she actually is. The woman naturally facilitates this process. The whole problem is that you already knew everything I mentioned in this video. The problem is that you deceive yourself every time with your own hands. Just look at your past, whom you chose, and by what criteria you chose them. In reality, we all know very well how to live correctly, whom and how to choose, what to do and what not to do. But the whole problem is that you yourself break those moral rules with your own hands. Now I will say something very terrible that you should think about. Any depraved woman, even a prostitute on the embankment, does not consider herself a bad person. She genuinely believes that she can be trustworthy and loyal. And this is an example of how inclined people are to deceive themselves. People enjoy believing their own lies and are terribly reluctant to face unpleasant reality. That's why a woman deceives herself and also deceives you. You willingly believe the woman's lies and deceive yourself. To put it more simply, a woman can easily deceive you because when you are infatuated with her, you shut off your mind and rely on your lower instincts. The problem isn't that you don't know how to determine if a woman is problematic or not. All the markers indicating a woman's problematic nature are easily visible, but only to those who want to see them. The problem is that men don't want to see all of this because you want to be with such a woman. To have a normal relationship, you need to stop feeding your weaknesses and walking down that path. For this, you should adopt one simple but strict principle. If something bothers you within the first 6 months of a relationship, you should be ready to end that relationship permanently and without looking back at that moment. Any discomfort at the beginning of a relationship means 100% problem in the future. If you want problematic games, then stay where you are. Just don't call it love, mutual understanding, feelings and so on. It's not like that. It's simply a gambling game from which absolutely every player comes out a loser. I hope this video was useful. Like it so it spreads as much as possible and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.